So senior MPs and House of Commons Speaker Sir Lindsay Hoyle have called for major changes now to Parliament's working practices following more allegations of misconduct.
Now, that's because that gentleman there, Conservative MP Neil Parish, resigned because he said he had been watching pornography twice in Parliament. Last week, our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, spoke to Mr Parish before it was revealed that he was the MP at the centre of all of this.
And just very finally, Neil, while we've got you on these reports, and we know your chief whip is looking into them from a female minister about another Conservative frontbencher watching pornography on his phone. What's your reaction to that? I mean, it's pretty jaw-dropping, the suggestion that it's happened. I mean, frankly, whoever it is, I mean, surely they would have to have the whip removed, wouldn't they?
I mean, I think the Whip's office will do a thorough investigation and we will wait and see that result. And I think, from that, then the decision will have to be made what action to be taken. Is
there a problem with the culture in Parliament, do you reckon? I mean, it's not just Conservative MPs, we should say, this is a cross-party issue, but there is a sense, I think, for people outside looking in, that there are just a whole range of stories, even this year, involving different MPs, that gives a sense that there's a cultural problem inside Parliament.
I think if you've got sort of 650 members of Parliament in what is, a very sort of very intense area, I mean, you are going to get people that step over the line. I mean, is it, I don't think there's necessarily a huge culture here, but I think it does have to be dealt with seriously. And I think, that's what the whips will do in our whip's office.
Well, think of how embarrassing it must have been for him being asked those questions by Darren.
My heart bleeds. My heart bleeds for him. I'm more embarrassed for his wife.
Are you?
He had lunch with her just before that interview, according to the papers over the weekend. She works for him. She's in and around Westminster. And now everyone's talking about her husband's filthy habits. And she's got children. They've got grandchildren. The whole thing's just so embarrassing. And so beneath the office that he was in.
And that's a very good way of putting it, Isabel, beneath the office. But you're right. I mean, when you think about it, if that was a school teacher, if that was the bank manager, if that was, who knows, it just should... If that was me sitting beside you... No, I mean, you would worry about how people would judge you, rightly so, for doing that, indulging that. But his argument is that he was looking up at a tractor called the Dominator, right?
Oh, it's a combine
harvester. So he had Googled Dominator. And apparently, do you want me to Google Dominator now and see what comes up?
No, but I read a really funny... This is the line I want to read you. Not since the Wurzels tried to woo a young woman with their brand new combine harvester has farm machinery acquired such an amorous flavour. And another headline I saw over the weekend, the tractor fetish led him into muck of another kind. I mean, it is funny, but it's also not at the same time. So you have to make light of these things. It's just the tractor reference.
Do you feel ashamed of yourself now that you're laughing?
No, I'm not laughing at the act. I'm laughing at the ridiculousness of the tractor and all this. Anyway.
Dominator.
Oh, dear.
Dominator. Yeah. There you go. That's it. Well, no, I'll not encourage anything else.
Let's move on.
Right, well, so meanwhile, 56 MPs have had allegations of sexual misconduct against them referred to the Independent Complaints and Grievance Scheme.
Yeah, the former leader of the House, Dame Andrea Leadsom, says that the scheme itself is not fit for purpose and more women would be at risk in the House until changes were made.
OK, now this comes after the Conservative Party inquiry into the sexist comments made by one of their MPs towards Angela Rayner, claimed that the Deputy Labour leader made the basic instinct comments herself, and that was big coverage in the newspapers yesterday. Earlier on this programme, we spoke to a lady called Alice Denby. Alice is the deputy editor of the online political website CapEx about the culture within Parliament and the threat it poses to women.
I mean, obviously, it's very damaging, but I think I'd like to say, especially to any young women who are watching who might be interested in a career in politics, that Westminster can be a wonderful place to work. I worked for an MP for 5 years, and it's fantastic. I mean, the opportunities you get there can be amazing. I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today if I hadn't had that job. So I just want to say it's not the sort of hell cesspit that some might present it at. That said, there are these kind of power dynamics at play in this place that make it possible for this culture of bullying and sexual harassment to flourish. And I mean, it's basically a Victorian system. It was only in 2018 that staff like me who worked for MPs has any kind of independent system of complaints if they had a problem with the MP that they worked for. So I think changes are needed, but I think we need to get a sense of proportion. You know, if you look at who's in the cabinet, you look at, you know, 2 of the great offices of state are held by women. It's not a place where women can't succeed.
No, but I mean, to say we need to get a sense of proportion, do you think it's acceptable for an MP to be watching porn in Parliament? And what message does that send to lots of people, not just parliamentarians, but to society at large? Young men growing up thinking, well, if that old boy is able to do that in one of the highest offices in the land, then I can certainly, you know, skip off school or whatever it might be. The message is terrible.
Yeah, I mean, that's not appropriate in any workplace. I mean, Dominator or not, you can see how he might have made that mistake, but he said himself he went a second time, and God knows what he was thinking.
What do you think, Alice, the people, the voters in the red wall districts are thinking, bearing in mind these local elections looming and publicity like this obviously affecting, I think, people's perceptions?
So what I've heard is that these kind of scandals are actually playing worse in the kind of more traditional, safe Tory seats in the south, whereas in the red wall, people are more likely to think that MPs and politicians are all the same. So I think with the local election results, it'll be interesting to see what happens geographically and how these things play out differently.
What about these 56 MPs who are under investigation, 3 of whom are in the cabinet? I mean, Kwasi Kwarteng yesterday was saying that, you know, there are a few bad apples within Parliament. How do you deal with those? How do you weed them out? And how do you make sure that this culture doesn't become the norm?
I think the first thing to say is that these complaints are coming forward now because, as I said, there was only the complaint system only existed since 2018. So I think what we're seeing is things working their way slowly through the system. But I think we certainly need that system to speed up. Andrea Leadsom, who did wonderful work on this, she set up the independence complaints system when she was leader of the House, has said that we need a complete overhaul. We need an independent HR system for MPs so that they can choose their researchers, but they don't employ them, they don't make those decisions about them. And I think that would be a good start.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.